Amidst these sacred celebrations, there's lighter entertainment in the form of the national game of Laos.
John, a fascinating game we're about to start watching now. Tiki, is it?
That's right, Tiki. It's a Laotian form of hockey.
The playing implement is very much like a crude hockey stick. Play begins with a ceremonial hit-off. The signal for all 70 players on the field to take a swipe. Begin Tian are the team in yellow playing against the rest of Laos. Now, if you think this is chaotic, just imagine how it was on horseback as it was originally played. With 69 other men on the team, the goalie reckons it's safe to take a call. Somehow, 3 goals are scored, all by Vientiane. That evening, the That Luang festival draws to a close with a procession by the pilgrims. Prayers are conducted on the stupa wall. Followed by a procession of the senior monks. That Luang is so sacred, it's become the symbol of both the Buddhist religion and Laos sovereignty. For such a serious religious gathering, there's a surprising touch of frivolity to mark its end. Fireworks, noisy fireworks, ignited on Laos's most holy building. From Vientiane, we embark on a hard day's drive, first alongside the Mekong River, then east into a mountain range that will eventually lead us out of Laos. Here we find the spectacular karst forests of the vast Kamoan National Park. And the Tang people, a hardy ethnic group who survive in relatively high altitudes. Onwards we press over the border and into a very wet region of Indochina.
Well, the next stage of our Mekong adventure takes us into Vietnam, a land that is only just re-emerging from the 2 decades of international isolation that followed what the locals described as the American War.
The man who engineered that war in his campaign for a unified Vietnam was Ho Chi Minh. Today, Vietnamese pay homage to him at the house where he lived as a teenager.
He grew up here, when he was from 11 to 16 years old. And then after that, he became a teacher.
Taking us through Ho Chi Minh's former house is Tran Phan Lu Hoang.
He was born into a very, very humble family, very well educated. So then all of his life, he just, sacrificed his life for the country. He tried to save people, from poverty, from everything. And even when he became the president, he lived in a very simple life. You know,
Very humble.
Very humble life, very modest life. And you know that we name Ho Chi Minh Uncle Ho. He's the uncle of everyone. He's the father of the country.
Further down the Vietnamese coast, in the city of Hue, we cruise towards other glimpses of history. We're on the Perfume River, surrounded by Vietnamese on the move and at work. These dilapidated houseboats are the home and work base for the river dwellers who make a modest living diving for sand. Nearby, we explore a series of extravagant mausoleums, the royal tombs. The most imposing is the tomb of the Emperor Tu Duc, who ruled for almost 40 years in the middle of the 19th century.
So this King Tu Duc was quite an extravagant eccentric. These statues, for instance, are built, lower than he was?
That's right, Greg. He was only 4'11", and he had a bit of an ego, so he wanted to make sure his Mandarin statues were shorter than himself.
Another eccentricity relates to the water collected for Tu Duc's cup of tea.
He had 103 concubines, and every morning he'd make them paddle out on his lake, and he insisted that he would only drink tea and the water must be the dewdrops collected from the lotus flowers.
Emperor Tu Duc's flamboyance ran to his food. He had to have 50 dishes at every meal. And what about his order to hide his body when he died?
Emperor Tu Duc's final instruction was also his most bizarre, and it related to the burial of his own body below these tombstones. 7 workmen were ordered into tunnels below here where they buried the king. The tunnels were then sealed. They were buried alive, and the whereabouts of the king and his treasures is now a complete mystery.
Today, the grand banquets that Emperor Tu Duc inspired are recreated here in the palace of one of his successors, King Khai Dinh. We get to stand in the king's shoes for a day, not to mention his crown and cape.
You are wearing the king's clothing, which belong to Nguyen dynasty between 1802 to 1945.
We're meeting Madame Mai, who tonight is serving up a magnificent feast. We're travelling to the former capital of South Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, or as the locals still prefer to call it, Saigon. By night, Vietnam's largest city truly buzzes as thousands of locals take to their bikes. It's known as Đi Choi, meaning go around, a nightly ritual where entire families cram onto their two-wheelers to take in the sights. There's plenty of those, like the Reunification Palace,